All right.
Okay.
We are live. A ver, we are live
Hi.
on Twitch, not on the podcast yet.
So many fans.
Yes, it would not be subtitles without this
us.
process. It'd be something else entirely. A ver, vamos a... We're about to record. So, 3, 2, 1...
Get ready to be amazed.
Blown away. Get ready to be seduced.
And
Abandoned.
abandoned? Is that what it says? That N's kind of melting into the D. But you get it.
I think the modern terminology is ghosted.
Abandoned.
Seduced and ghosted.
Seduced and
the new
ghosted.
terminology. Hi everyone, welcome to another week of Subtitles.
We have had a major hiatus.
Yes, we have. So, for those of you who have forgotten who we are, I am Christina Ochoa.
And I am Karen Gorostieta. That's my full name.
And this is subtitles in Spanglish.
In Spanglish, that's right.
And we have had a bit of a hiatus. We took a few weeks off to reformat a little bit of what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and also crazy shit happened.
So much crazy shit happened. Yeah, and we're gearing up for more of it. So
yes, and it was really tough to say definitely Tuesdays we're going to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the last few times just the world didn't want us to do anything.
We would get
a
together.
Gas leak scare, and the fire department came.
Yeah.
Things happen.
All
Anyway,
sorts of random emergencies and stuff happening.
that was fun though. The fire department thing.
It was. We had a bit of a scare with a gas leak, and then they came. It wasn't really a scare. They're like, ladies, it's fine.
Well, we weren't
Nothing was
terrified,
really
but
going to happen.
It was a loud, very loud whooshing, whirring, whatever it was, and it was letting go of a lot of gas.
Yeah. It was also...
What do you think?
Yeah, there we go. It also felt like it was one of those things where we were feeding into the drama. We were definitely encouraging it. We're like, oh my gosh, we almost died. And,
yeah, sure.
Ooh, we feel high. Not a real thing.
No.
But we're really into it.
We, entertained the idea that we would explode the neighborhood.
Excitement for excitement's sake.
It was on the way. In fact, we were coming to this little spot where we record, and it was because of that small outing that we smelled this horrible smell of gas. And anyway, so today is all about Seduced and Abandoned. Technically not a movie in a foreign language. No. So
to be clear, but it is a movie set in Cannes and also about making movies.
That's right.
And it felt very appropriate and like a really good jumping off point for some of the other conversations that we want to have.
A lot to talk about. It's a movie, a doc about making movies, and it's set in like you said, it's in Cannes, and that's the Cannes. That's besides TIFF.
Mucho más fácil en español.
Besides TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, it's the other super huge international marketplace, and the one that has the most kind of ooh la la wow factor, right?
Yeah, the glamour.
Not anymore, of course, but when this was made back in 2013, or it was released in 2013, it still had all that. And,
so James Toback, who is the director of the film, partners up with Alec Baldwin, and they go and they're basically shooting it's a documentary, but it really is a behind the scenes almost on the filmmaking process. And their whole premise is that they want to make a modern version of El Último Tango en París.
Last Tango in Paris, starring Marlon Brando. And directed by the famous Bernardo Bertolucci. Yeah. And I think the twist they want, or the version they want, is a couple of war correspondent, journalists who meet up somewhere in the Middle East. They hadn't really determined where it was. And they also, it starts off in New York because they're talking to Neve Campbell, right? Who they want to be the co-star. And for those of you that haven't seen Last Tango in Paris, myself included, but you know that it is sexually bonkers film.
Yes. And that's how, and they're prefacing all of their conversations. They're like, esto va a ser, it's going to be very sexual, very graphic, but really because it's very intimate, and we want to tackle these topics, and we want to talk about it, and Nev and I could be a great match, and we could do it. That's the way Alec Baldwin was kind of like selling the movie. He just came off of 30 Rock. He wants to do something, a big departure, you know, from that character and his TV persona identity.
Yeah, I guess to get back into film, a lot of this touches on bankability as a superstar, whether or not you've got it, and what international financiers think of you. And it doesn't have to do so much with like film knowledge or, you know, deep love of cinema. It's about whoever's got the deepest pockets and ultimately some pretty simple math. Yeah. And it's all kind of internal math. It's not a spreadsheet. It's like, she won't sell. Yeah. Nev won't sell. She can't do it. Yeah. Or, you
even
know,
Alec,
man
like,
anymore.
oh, yeah, you're not, you know, if it's Ryan Gosling and Diane Kruger at the time, you know, they were kind of two of the stars, or Jessica Chastain.
Right.
And they were talking to them, and they're like, oh, they are very popular. They will sell box office internationally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's also interesting to see the level of, not stubbornness, but kind of like loyalty that they have or don't have at times, depending on who they're talking to, in order to get funded. A lot of the promises that they made initially, they can't uphold. No. They can't promise Nev that she could, you know, they're like, well, maybe we could have two women, and Nev could play the other character.
Right.
But, you know, we get the main
star. I love
star.
her. But yeah, there's always that button there.
Of course, but maybe. Also, if you have not seen that, it is a hilarious portion of a stand-up show with...
it's Louis C.K.
Yeah, Louis C.K.
encountered some complications.
Yeah, some controversy.
And then also a recent past.
That portion of the stand-up special that he has...
Of course,
but maybe. It's
brilliant.
Okay, a ver, seguimos. Oh,
yes.
One of the things that they highlight the most in this movie, I think, because they talk to so many stars and this glamour, this idea of the the famous, big, giant red carpet at Cannes, and like all of these things. And you were telling me that there's all these articles talking about how that's probably done now, too.
Could this be the end of the lavish premiere?
Yeah.
Could be. I don't know when the next time anyone will feel comfortable enough to pack into a theater, stand in line with a bunch of photographers, because you've been on the red carpets, Christina, and it's just what you don't see, or what the audience doesn't see, is a packed, like 2 or 3 rows deep of reporters, you know, kind of vying to get in there.
The bleed, what is it? Nosebleed section? That's what at a concert, it feels like that, but there's photographers, where, you know, like when they're against the fences and the air in the front, and they're all leaning forward, and they're trying to like get to the singers and stuff. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing, but with the photographers all trying to get the right angle and trying to position themselves. So they're definitely, you know,
that part
risk.
Alone. Yeah. It's already a problem walking in. You're not even in the theater yet. And I think, too, people maybe have this, like, the zeitgeist is getting back to basics, and the idea of putting on a fabulous dress to celebrate, you know, a movie, and the other people not being able to go out and so on. It seems kind of against.
Yeah. And also kind of how it started initially, all that whole tradition was based on theatrical experiences, right? It was Broadway? Like the theater, like the red carpets and the, you know, the grand entrances and stuff like that, which actually brings me to, I think, something that fits for subtitles, which is the expression, mucha mierda.
Yeah, I don't hear that in Argentina.
Oh, what do you hear in Argentina? What is a common, the equivalent, for those of you who don't know, it's the equivalent of break a leg in Spain. We say mucha mierda, which literally translates to lots of shit.
Yeah. I don't know.
You don't know.
I mean, in Argentina, suerte is every 5 minutes. Suerte. But I don't know in film or theater what they would say. No idea.
Well, mucha mierda, actually, I mean, the etymology of the expression is pretty interesting, because it also goes back to
a fun story.
To the theatrical kind of, you know, golden era of horses and carriages coming to the theater on opening night. So instead of telling people to break a leg, which I actually can't quite remember why that is the expression.
No idea.
But in Spanish, we say mucha mierda because on a very successful opening night, there would be a lot of horses and a lot of carriages. So at the entrance of the theater, there were these barriers where you would shake off your boots, and the boots would be covered in shit from the horses that were all pulling up to the entrance of the theater.
Yeah.
So when you had a successful opening night, you had a lot of shit at the entrance of the theater. And it stuck.
Much like the shit, it stuck.
It stuck. But yeah, anyway, so that's just like our idiom of the day, I think,
Yeah,
for today.
mucha mierda.
Mucha mierda. Yeah.
Can you shorten it to just mierda?
No.
Probably not. Okay. If you just say shit,
Different
not
meaning.
good. If you say lots of shit, good.
Yes.
Okay.
What was that comedian that said shit is such a versatile? It was a foreigner that was like, oh, because you can be the shit.
Yes.
Or you can be a piece of shit.
And you're
or you very different things.
Yeah. Right. It's very versatile.
Yeah, it had like there was a whole comedy
Yeah,
special.
he was
If
very
we can
funny.
find it, we'll link it at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so sorry, yes, let's carry on with, the review of Seduced and Abandoned.
Yeah. I mean, so the gist of it is financing.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very glamorous romp to the hottest locations in Cannes to beg for money. And that's what it is. It's begging for money. It's, fancy hotel rooms.
Yachts,
and
mega
meeting
yachts.
with
Oligarchs.
individuals. Exactly. Whose
Yeah.
fathers probably made a lot of money and who now have reputations for being high rollers, big investors or bon vivants, whatever. But it doesn't always work out. A lot of these guys aren't that willing to part with their money. And even if it's Alec Baldwin and we're impressed by him, we think, hey, this is a guy who's done it all. Still not enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were asking, I think at the beginning, they were asking for something, along the $20 million range, right? Wasn't it? And then I think that the financiers would just come back and say, like, well, if you get, again, Jessica Chastain to do it, then we have a conversation.
Yeah.
But as is, maybe we'll give you like 5.
Yeah. Painful amount for Hollywood.
Yeah, well, it's also a very tricky amount, right? Because when you talk about funding and financing movies, a lot of the time, if you're going to under 5 and you're doing
The
a
tiers,
like a $1 to $5 million movie, a lot of horror movies have this kind of a budget, a lot of very fast paced, Blumhouse is exceptional at making under 5 movies that then internationally do really well, whether it's video on demand or they have a release. Then you get to the $100 million budget, which is the Avengers, to go further up from there, of course, 180, whatever million. And you have like the big guaranteed totem poles, prequels, sequels, whatever.
Yeah.
And then in the middle, you have this space where a lot of indie films are, kind of trying to make it work between 5 and 15, and it's a very difficult budget to kind of, navigate and justify, and it's not really, they don't understand the ROI on it. It's really fucking tricky to get that space.
Yeah, it feels like if it's under 5, everybody's pulling, right? Everybody involved, actors aren't getting paid much, everybody's saying, we're doing this on the cheap, we band together. Crazy budget, everybody gets what they want, or at least attempts to. And in the middle, then it's like, well, who's taking the hit? Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and who's making the bank on the return?
Yeah. I've heard, though, too, now that everything's just being released for streamers, that the marketing budgets are just almost gone. So at least that's money that they can count on keeping, or at least not budgeting in. What used to be like, okay, we'll have a $50 million marketing budget. Not anymore. Like, they don't care about putting up billboards, and if they do, apparently Netflix
it's all
does,
online viral marketing, probably.
Maybe LA and New York. Netflix probably has a few like billboards that they put up, but other than that, I thought that was pretty interesting. There are a lot of, let's call them big releases that also snuck up on me. What was this Charlize Theron one that we saw?
Which one?
They're like, not legendary. What is the name of it? Where they don't die.
Oh yes. I can't remember what it was called.
Anyway, one that snuck up on me. Like 1 minute nothing, the next minute they're like, everybody's watching this. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the new viral campaigns, if anything, and the word of mouth, and that's kind of like the way to go.
The viral didn't reach me.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we're seeing a lot is the new modes of advertisements. I know PR companies are also really struggling with kind of what they're doing now, too, because of that same thing. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've been noticing a lot in Hollywood is people, movies, releases, projects, or whatever, kind of banking on this idea that, let's call them either influencers or people in positions of...
You mean my neighbors?
Yeah. Yes.
Actually, I have an
teenagers.
Influencer neighbor.
Yeah.
And a Netflix neighbor.
That's true.
I am sandwiched.
Yes,
by that experience.
You're protected.
Yeah, you're protected. That's right. And still nothing gets to me. Oh my God.
From autonomous thought. You're protected from any...
Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yes, so, the idea that these people are capitalizing on spreading the word in new channels, new medium, without the middleman means the budgets get kind of skewed. So, I know, for example, se me pira el nombre. Matthew McConaughey, for example, who's been making the rounds, all the podcasts.
Oh, right.
All of the, promoting, for example, his book and whatnot. Somebody was talking about how he didn't need to do any kind of publicity, standardized publicity. So the publishers were able to make either more copies or really give another bonus or whatever, or focus more on different assets as opposed to trying to market it, because he was just going to go on all these new viral, the Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, Howard Stern.
Not film related, but marketing related.
Yeah.
Just a quick aside.
Yeah.
Airbnb, which a lot of people thought, oh no, the pandemic, in fact, is having its best year ever. They nixed basically their entire marketing budget. Turns out they didn't need it.
Right.
So now they're going to have this huge, surplus, I guess, in their income this year, their revenue, because they're doing better than they did before marketing. Yeah. So, it'll be interesting to kind of keep an eye on that for us specifically for this podcast now with film and everything. Interesting topic.
Yeah, and I also think that one of the good things that's happening, at least for where we stand, because that's the kind of content that we love to review and watch, is international or national borders when it comes to content and media are even more blurred. It's even easier to get access to subtitled movies or foreign language films. As a matter of fact, it's even encouraged in production. We see it with content development. We develop projects, and people want foreign language, films and TV shows. Yeah. So I think that it's really interesting because all those things that we've talked about, like, we want this to happen. We want this to happen in the industry. We want people to be more on favor of watching foreign features and things like that instead of remaking them all the time.
Yeah.
We wanted to do that. As a matter of fact, this movie we wanted to review, we also got it confused because we thought it was the Italian.
That's right. So, Seduced and Abandoned is
an Italian feature from the 1960.
Right, something. But then there was some confusion because it was an American co-pro or something like that.
Yeah.
And Christina said, actually, it's an American film. I'm like, wow, that's weird.
Yeah.
All of the Italian
It was like
names.
Pepito or Piccolino. Or
intensely Italian cast, considering that it's not, but it is, in fact, Italian.
And we streamed this one, and it was fascinating anyway, so we were like, let's just go with this one anyway, it still applies. But funny enough, this was Seduced and Abandoned was an Italian feature that we were aiming to review for this podcast.
We're still figuring it out.
Technical difficulties.
Hey man, this thing's evolving.
Slowly but surely. I think we're getting to a really good place.
We're a lump of coal being compressed into the diamond.
Okay, well let's make sure, let's hope it's a diamond and not like a cubic zirconia that
comes
comes
diamond.
out. Fair enough. Okay. Fair enough.
Or is there another gem that through compression evolves more quickly that we could probably... It's aquamarine. It's a soft orange topaz, okay? Still.
Well, recently we were in Zion, and one of the things that was really interesting, what was that one, the topaz, but it was called something like Harlequin, or it was called...
Oh, God, yeah, I remember the gem store.
It was like a beautiful iridescent
gorgeous
gem. Just wonderful, wonderful. So if there are any geologists out there that want to talk to us,
send us giant samples of beautiful gems
that we can review.
We'll pay for
just give us the Latin name and then it'll be subtitled.
Yeah, we'll cover shipping, but that's it.
But I think that's one of the major benefits that I'm noticing with the removal of the distribution models that we used to have. which is the middleman is now being removed. So you don't have judge and jury in between the creators and the filmmakers and the consumers. Right now it becomes, I mean, you still have issues with your funding and you still have all those issues, but you really have people who make something the way they want to make it without somebody telling them like, well, do this because that's our market. It's like, now you find your market. Now you don't need, you know, the standard studio models in that way.
Everything, I mean, like in music, there's so many categories now, and everything is kind of becoming niche in a way, right? You never have to see something you don't care to see anymore. Just like on the radio, you don't need to listen to a regular radio station. Yeah. Just, you know, do satellite radio or go on Spotify and you could customize everything. Yeah. And probably you'll find, I mean, my guess is, you know, smaller films, lower budgets, because people also want to avoid large crews and all that sort of thing, makes it much more nimble, and you can film in other places, which is probably why we've been hearing, hey, you could set it anywhere. Rather, well, anywhere that's not, you know, neck deep in viral load. Yeah. But and
I also think that another thing that it is happening a lot is inside the content media, everyone is, you know, people used to target like, what is the lowest common denominator? How can we hit as many households as we can, or how can we have as many viewers? That was the metric, that was the standard. I no longer think that really is the case. I think,
well, now with Facebook and all the data mining, you know exactly who you're marketing to, whereas before it was like women, men, teens. Now it's men who buy this particular brand of toilet paper and also watch the Super Bowl, but also
read Hemingway. It's that specific. How many of those are there?
I mean,
so many.
You know what? If there's 20,000, I don't know.
I don't know.
But that's, So now our marketing tools are also so specific, thanks to us having unwittingly given up all of our information. We'll get exactly what we want.
And also, I was listening to an interview on Strictly Business on Variety's podcast about this, where the head of Netflix was kind of talking about some of those metrics and how they actually now quantify success differently as well. Okay. And how they are tracking projects that people, for example, how quickly they binge through them.
Okay, go ahead.
Meaning, it's not enough just how many people watched this 10-hour series. Yeah. It's how many of them didn't stop after the first episode. How many of them watched the whole thing because they were compelled to finish sooner rather than later. Versus another 10-episode series, which maybe people don't pick up right away. Or they leave and they start and then they leave halfway through and then they resume. Different metrics for those two. And I think it's really interesting is like, because we do prioritize and give more value to, say, the filmmakers or the writers or the creatives on the shows that maybe are watched immediately, or the ones that they don't hit stop, or the ones that they, you know, watch to completion, and the ones that they do so in a faster way, and the ones that, you know, all that stuff now is becoming part of that metric of success and value.
It's fascinating. It's also scary.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about. We watched also another documentary, the Great Hack.
Oh, the Great
recently.
Hack. We did.
After having seen The Social Dilemma, which was going viral, and a friend of ours, Ripin,
a good pairing,
told us to watch The Great Hack, and it is, especially leading up to the election, and you know, kind of like everything that's going on with. And what happened with Cambridge Analytica and all that controversy.
And possibly happening with Facebook again. They've been getting into a little bit of hot water on the East Coast, I believe.
So that was, you know, that was kind of one of the things that if we try to apply that to films and content and media and extrapolate some of those lessons and talk about how they could affect our industry, it really is the idea of using TV, which I'm pretty sure I've seen in superhero movies, right? Like a supervillain using TV to like hypnotize.
Oh, sure.
Right? Was that The Incredibles? What movie?
Many movies. I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, where it's or even Batman, the one with the Joker, right? Didn't he use TVs to control?
It could be. the only image I can actually think of is Poltergeist, which is not a supervillain, but it's still the haunted house communicating to that little girl.
Yeah, it's a super entity.
It's like the snow.
Yeah, yeah. But it is. It's something where it's like all of a sudden mind control via our devices, and that's kind of what is happening.
Yeah.
Right? Which is with these things. So it makes you, I think, for me, it makes me have a more profound awareness and respect for the kind of content I consume, knowing that I have some freedom to pick what I want to consume, obviously, but most likely I'm still getting catered to things depending on what I've consumed in the past.
All of us, I think, have had certain videos and movies suggested to us ad infinitum.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, I get it. You want me to see this? Okay, fine. And I have given in. I'm like, to the machine, or whatever you want to call it. I'm like, yeah, right, I guess you guys know me. And it's a funny thought, but it's also, kind of creepy. But to some degree, I think all of us are not just comfortable, but probably, not grateful is an incredibly wrong choice of a word. But no, it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you guys know.
Well, I think we've also...
How do you deep dive? You have to keep... Because it still is suggesting, no matter what the category, you're still getting suggestions within the parameters that you've unconsciously set for yourself.
Yeah, well, if you think about, the amount of information and the polling that a company like Amazon has.
Yeah.
Let alone Netflix, but Amazon, who not only are you buying and consuming content on Amazon Prime from, but they have your preferences, the brands that you tend to buy, the things like everything. So the books that you're consuming.
Extra creepy. I have some fake plant, the fiddly fig, one of those giant kind of fake fig leaf plants that you always see
I have
in
one
architecture magazines.
Yeah.
Yes. My brother was outside. We have one outside. It fell down. 5 minutes later, there's a suggestion to buy the exact same plant from Amazon, and that was it. That was so creepy. I'm like, are there more cameras? Is his own phone like, oh, that thing fell, I guess it's broken, hey, need a new plant? That was creepy. That was a bizarre moment, because it wasn't just like us talking about leggings and getting a leggings commercial. It's a random physical thing in the world falling.
Okay, but correlation, not causation. Maybe if that had been recommended and it hadn't fallen, you would have dismissed it immediately and not thought about it twice.
It happens to be the exact same one. It wasn't some random other plant. It happened to be the exact same plant, same height, 4 branches. Theory. That's it. Sorry.
Now we know which one of us is more likely to wear a tin hat. I'm kidding. Conspiracy theory. But I know what you mean. I mean, the coincidences are weird, but I also will say, I think a lot of the time we interpret, because that's what cognitively we're designed to do, right?
Yeah.
We interpret things. I may not have noticed a plant being recommended on mine, but I would notice dog food. If it just so happened that day I run out of dog food,
right.
It's like, oh my god, how did it know? But yes, I totally understand.
But I guess to bring it back to the larger things, to the movie, which is the bankability of stars and stuff.
Yes.
That's from 7 years ago. And now, like you're saying, we've got this really precision marketing happening. So I wonder what that means now for bank. Some people are, Chris Hemsworth is going to get, roles that other people who might be equally good or handsome or whatever, but don't have that same bankability. But now if you could target market, like, who I haven't seen in a long time? Michael Cera. Like a Michael Cera type movie. That kind of indie stuff. That's what, it was like, oh, indie. But now, if you can target indie, like...
Well, but I think it's interesting because I think there may be a divide of target specific content versus artistic craft content. But what I think is going to happen is there was a moment there where we were headed down this terrible rabbit hole where art, craft, creativity, whatever it is, was suddenly monetized in a way that made it seem like, oh, if you're successful at this, you can have the best of both worlds, right? You can be the artist that also does an indie feature that then wins the Oscars, and then all of a sudden you direct Avengers 25 or whatever it is.
Okay.
And now I think what's happening is there may be more of a divide, but we're going to start losing that, because you're going to start seeing people who are basing films on commerce, and they're going to be doing that.
Yeah.
They're going to capitalize on this moment. They're going to be like, great, I have all this data. I'm going to House of Cards, right? Which was based on, okay, all of the successful input of Netflix and all their data. They created a show based on, okay, people like watching this. They like, at the time, they liked Kevin Spacey. They like this. They like that.
Yeah.
And that was proof that it worked.
Yeah.
But then you're also going to have the other side of it, which is people who are like, I refuse to cooperate in that. Even if I'm a part of that system, I refuse to embrace that. I'm going to do what I want. But it's going to go back to that time where artists weren't necessarily viewed as people who could have immediate, instant, fast, or very large success in that way. Mm-hmm. They may have social standing, but financially there have been periods of time throughout history and in different cultures where artistry was not financially remunerated.
Sure. Let's say financially rewarded.
That makes
sense. Throw out better. Remunerated.
Remunerados, guys. Remunerados. And I think that also matters, because you've always had those people. You've always had the people who are doing it for love of the craft, and then get caught up in, say, a blockbuster and hate it.
Yeah.
And then that's a disaster. And the people who are happy to be doing a blockbuster or whatever it is, and, they probably are more successful at doing so, but they're not necessarily crippled by not being able to do, the movie about the addict's journey through this and, like, over 3 months that's going into, like, these dark places. So I'm okay with it. To me, it's kind of like the idea of we can't not accept it.
No, it's happening.
Right. Like music, when music all of a sudden we had, what was the Napster? Right? Was that the torrent thing?
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What happened there? Everyone was freaking out.
Yeah.
That's a loss of money now for the music industry is disrupted, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. Because guess what? It's just dividing different people. The person who is going to buy the album or the CD or the whatever is not the same person downloading it.
I'm not sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's not the same audience.
I think some people will always, buy and say, I want to support X audience. I think a lot of people can skate by saying, oh, this band, it's Metallica. They already have millions. I'm not going to buy the album. There's no support notion there. Metallica being one of the most vocal bands against that sort of thing. I'm not sure about that.
Really?
I think some people are definitely going to say, like, well, maybe I'll pay for this band, but not for that band, or it's only a single. So the gray area, I think, is pretty significant when it comes to, like, buy and trade or share.
Really? Yeah. I just feel like the industry is the one the infrastructure is the one that has to adapt, and not the consumers or the creators. Meaning, books, when audiobooks started coming out, when PDFs started being available, people would download PDFs from books that they wanted to read versus buying the book for $5 or whatever it was. That person is not the person who's going to the store and buying the book anyway. If they can get the PDF for free, they're going to get it for free, right? The person downloading music, what happens then? There's a shift in the industry. Spotify's, Amazon Music, iTunes, whatever, where now you're subscription based. Most people have these services. They're not downloading torrents anymore. Most people can get access to music for free, but they don't own it.
Okay. And
then there's some people who still want to buy CDs. Great. Now artists monetize by number of plays. Now there's a tracker, and that's what has to happen.
And they're pretty unhappy about it. Because the amount's not. You also, like, have the loss of the concept of an album and what it means to be an artist.
Well, that's nostalgia too. Yeah.
Well, but that's part of what our artists like, creating albums. They could crank out singles, but then if you're just a singles machine, I think musicians really do like doing that. Oh, this is a period of my life or something. I mean, I don't put out albums or anything. I don't make music. just a fan, just a listener. But
soon, Subtitles is going to have a soundtrack.
Yeah, it's all changing really rapidly, and it's everybody's desperate to monetize it because you want artists to be able to continue making art, but at the same time, there's a big disconnect, I think, between the artist and fans a lot of the time. Like, you now on Spotify, you just oh yeah, remember that song? Find it. Okay, there it is. You're not going through a box and a record and looking at the artwork and remembering this and that. So it's like super fast consumption of the music, and I think a real detachment from them, and sometimes easier to just probably cheat your way or not pay for the music than it is to be like, oh, I'm that person who's going to make sure I buy the full album to celebrate their efforts and to support their cause. They're going to be, I think Radiohead might have had a model about like kind of pay what you want. Now granted, Radiohead, they're doing fine, nobody's worried about Radiohead, but I thought that was kind of interesting. I wonder what the outcome
like a
was.
Donation based consumption.
Pay $5 for my album, pay $25. That's probably where you might find your answer, because that's a question of like, well, yes, I want to pay, but I think your songs are worth 25 cents each versus $2 each or whatever it would be.
I mean that might be a really good gauge as to how much people or that individual prizes or values music, content, whatever.
Back in the CD days, I must have bought 2 of each of those albums, because one time a book of CDs of mine was stolen, and also the times I lent it to somebody, like, give it back, which of course you never get back.
No, of course, just like regular books, you just don't ever get them back.
Never. Just assume that they're.
I will buy 3 or 4 of something to gift, because there's no way I'm ever getting back a book. I think I've given so many books away and never gotten them. But anyway, so with movies, it kind of, I think that what's interesting is at the same time the threshold of accessibility is also exponentially, being lowered at the same rate. So now anybody can make a movie with an iPhone if they fucking wanted to.
Oh, what was that movie? Tangerine was like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that one. But...
So it's like, if you want to make a movie, technically you can.
And people are doing them now with like super high functioning kind of digital cameras now, right? Like little handhelds. They look like actual this size camera.
There's people who've done them with iPads, because like all with iPads, it's all 1080. So it's like at this point, the camera, the lenses and whatever, you get very high quality for the same thing. And I think that is also a threshold of like an entry level. Anybody can make a movie, right? Yeah. Anybody, and then with a computer you can edit. Yeah. And with there's open source of anything. So I also think that that actually breeds creativity to me as 100%. Well. Yeah. Without the motivation of like, okay, but it's the indie singer putting it out on Spotify. His metric is probably not how much money am I making. It's also how many people are hitting like or enjoying my music. How many people are listening? Can I get a record deal later? Do I have a fan base? Can I do a concert? Whatever it is. I don't know, but that would be, I think, that metric, that gauge is shifting the same way technology. We were talking about how IP and tech is the new asset. Yeah. Right? It's not gold, it's not property, it's not this, it's not that. Tech is. Well, I feel like with film and TV internationally, we're finding out that connection to an audience is a new metric. We don't have the right ruler yet. Yeah. But that's what matters. Mm-hmm. They don't know how, but the person who hits the button and hits play when that episode is over, somehow that show is more valuable than the person who waits till the next day. Yeah. Right. I think that's fascinating. I don't know where it's going to lead. But I think it's really interesting. A friend of ours, T, who has a digital podcast show now, called The Distillery, raised a really interesting question about creativity, and should we share creativity with others? Is it like a share the wealth, or is it each man to himself and to each his own? And one of the conversations that was started there was also about this idea that this tech guru gentleman who was on it was talking about how all of these things have been predicted, but we were talking about the time scale, and they were predicted 10 to 15 years from now. Right. And the pandemic suddenly expedited everything. Yeah. And so now we don't really have predictive models that work for the foreseeable future because we can't predict that fast what's going to happen now.
Yeah, and that'll probably just keep happening in different ways, in different whatever technologies and formats. We're still, although highly sophisticated, pretty dumb machines. You know what I mean? We're not going to evolve as quickly as technology does. So yeah, we already have some ill effects. We're getting very philosophical.
Yes.
I was like, should we keep going down this route? We've talked about these sort of things too. About, I mean, creativity springing forth from everyone is fantastic because I think creativity is good for you and good for every child to express themselves artistically and everything like that. I wonder about, though, when it comes to like the discovery of other people's creative output, right? And the indie versus huge, like, grand scale thing. Just going back again to bankability and what it means.
Yeah.
You know, I think the indie thing was so much about kind of, I always think about a record store, about going through and discovering, right? And now you can market at that person and kind of spoon feed them indie choices.
Yeah.
I just think it's like when we were talking about the awards and Cannes and I'm squeaking, aren't I? I can't hear the squeaks. I have a mouse under here. He's adorable. I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about the indie. I think I know where you were
like
going.
The Independent Spirit Awards or something like that. Even like you're gonna now need another level of something that's like maybe a non-streaming platform. Like where is the true indie gonna be?
Yeah, is it
Twitch?
Probably.
Twitch films?
Twitch films are the new thing. I vote for that.
If it happens, Twitch.
Yes.
We want to be
Sponsor
on your
us,
or we could be
for
we could judge some new Twitch output.
Yes, exactly.
Twitch
Movies
films.
on Twitch. Send us your links. But we actually have another good friend of ours and another podcast that if you don't listen to, you should, Mindscape. Which is Sean Carroll, and he has these really wonderful, intellectuals and thinkers and scientists coming on board to talk about very relevant, very interesting topics. So if you haven't heard it, go on and check it out. But also, he had, I want to say it was like a social anthropologist or somebody, it wasn't Carol Tavris, but it was somebody else, who was talking about how, funny enough, even though, say, pop music was technically popular culture, it's supposed to be that lowest common denominator that people listen to.
Right.
The most common selection of genres, if people were to click what kind of music do they listen to, is actually indie or alternative, which inherently makes it not indie and alternative and makes it pop culture.
I wonder if because people like me, who are like born in the 70s or something, and also a little bit younger, indie, alt rock, whatever, was kind of popular music, right? Like rock music, think about...
Yeah, of course. Bon Jovi.
Right.
Yeah.
So if now that's most of the people tuning in...
No, I just think in general, it's a polling of when people asked what kind of genres do you listen to for music, people would avoid the term pop culture,
people
popular.
Say, I listen to indie music, except it's a majority of people listening to indie music.
Except it's 70% of people saying indie music, which automatically makes it the pop culture music.
Like Weezer would have been indie music, but you're like, wow, everybody was listening to Weezer, for example. But now it's pop music.
Yeah.
But I think pop now, it's indie alt rock. It's the guitars. It's that drum and guitars type of thing. I think it's no longer really actually indie. And then pop music is probably like more like synth and like heavily produced. So
it's the radio top 40s version. That's what I think most people associate with pop. Right? It's the we used to have boy bands or whatever, and now maybe it's the strong female young, the Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande and whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that is really the way most people describe it.
Yeah.
Like that would be pop culture, pop music.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I have a friend, Shannon, who works at the Grammys, and they actually really struggle with categories a lot of the time.
I bet.
Especially because, like, again, there's just not a lot of, like, rock being made anymore. So there's still a rock category, So who's submitting? Who are the judges? And is it just becoming a smaller and smaller category? And you're like, how could rock be a small category? Well, it can be.
Yeah.
And there's just a few people, I think, contributing to it in any significant way, sadly. Talk to Dave Grohl. He's pretty pissed about it.
Somebody asked us about like the online Google algorithm and will that determine what popular will be. Again, I think, you know, yeah, we're getting into metrics and how do you really define popular? Is it a number? Is it how many people? Is it the majority? Is that what's popular? Is it what is most in the zeitgeist?
Let's call it majority music.
You know, yeah. I mean, really, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And will it that more than for music, I just think I'm thinking film. You know, like will that be what people think popular is? I also think social media plays an incredibly important role in all of these industries. Anything that's audiovisual medium, you know. I think that we cannot forget how much these platforms push, influence, impact, and become the new word of mouth, the new reference point, the new, oh, I've seen this ad on my Instagram 25 times. Oh, I've seen 5 friends on Twitter talking about this thing, and here's the link, and I'm going to go into it. So I think that, you know, again, watch The Great Hack as well, because it's really fantastic. And if you pair that up with The Social Dilemma, you'll probably have a crisis and like reevaluate.
Disturbing dash enlightening, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking about moving forward in predictive elements, we decided we are going to try and start a little weekly nudge talking about ideas that we think should get made. Ideals, hopes, dreams, wishes.
What would we like to see?
What would we like to see?
What would we like to see?
I think, you know what, I think I would love to see something that maybe I would like to cast something in my dreams.
Go ahead.
I would like to put Idris Elba. Yes, I know. I can't help it. Emma Stone.
No.
Yeah, please don't. Yeah. Idris Elba, Emma Stone.
Okay.
Gina Davis.
All right.
And Michael Fassbender.
Goodness. Because at first I'm like, comedy. Then I'm like, Gina Davis. I'm like, okay, you gotta make it smarter. Michael Fassbender, I'm like, sad, depressing? I don't know.
But I would love to see all of them doing something that is very comedic.
Okay.
Even though most of them are not necessarily comedic actors. Maybe Emma
Period
Stone
or current or future? Setting.
Future.
Futuristic setting.
Yeah.
Comedy.
And I would love for it to be futuristic but adventure, kind of Indiana Jones-ish,
I was
Jumanji-ish.
Without having the cast or anything, I want to see a big old swashbuckling movie like an Indiana Jones. But I mean, I know they're not going to make them now, at least for
They're changing it. I think it's going to become a woman. I think it's going to be
Indian. Meaning the making of those films. I guess maybe with a ton of CGI. But just like big cast, big locations, I think that sort of thing
I think that's still going to happen. I think people are dying to do it.
Dangerous.
I think people are really excited. Yeah. That is the kind of movie that industries themselves are itching to make because that's the movie that's going to get people to the movie theater, right? So theaters want to make it. People it's just I think all around people are fighting. What's going to happen with theaters?
Aren't they being rented out for like $100 for a few hours?
You can rent an AMC theater for $100.
That's right.
The whole thing, and then you can just go have your own.
Right.
You know,
for whatever length the film, I assume.
Yeah.
So the Cats movie, then.
Yes.
Oh my god! Again.
I will say this is the worst way to make a movie is to like think of. We were having this conversation recently where it's like you have all these great ingredients. And you think they're gonna make a cake, but it's like a mango, an oyster. You know, it's not. The Tourist, I think, was a great example of that happening and being a disaster.
Yeah, it should work.
It doesn't. Yeah.
To me, honestly, there are very few examples. I think I can't think of any now, but like where so many stars, like the more stars, the better. No.
Yeah.
It's usually a failure. You can't have too many famous faces up there.
You can if they're kind of I think if they're cameos and funny or cute or almost like Easter eggs. And I think, you know who did that was Deadpool. big budget, huge budget, would have like Brad Pitt come in to be electrocuted
but
for
the main
a
guys
split
weren't.
second.
And Ryan Reynolds is mostly you don't really he's Deadpool.
Yeah.
It's just I love Deadpool
I think it's fantastic. It's very
much.
funny.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But the new cast, like his little new crew, weren't super famous faces, and the cameos are fun. But I'm trying to think of, I forget the name of that movie. It was like Mars Attacks, I think. It was one of these movies that had like a bunch of stars. It's like, don't do it.
Really?
Yeah.
There's been a couple of very recent, like, oh my god, Dune is going to have...
I think mega cast though. I
think that's a mega cast. I think Dune
I'll
is
watch
like...
Dune.
I'm still going to watch it too.
I'm gonna
like,
watch it.
there's no way. The old one, I just remember watching it recently again, just rewatching it.
Yeah.
And the sets. I
It's
was like,
cool.
there's a little tiny part of me that wishes I had decided to go into acting sooner prior to, I mean, I don't regret going into science. I love science, but I'm thinking like if I had decided to be a child actor or whatever it was or something when I was younger.
To be the creepy little sister?
No.
Oh.
I'm just thinking about like the set design and how it was all real. Right now you're going up an escalator in a green room.
Yeah.
And everything that's really incredibly vast is done in a studio in Pinewood in London.
Avatar.
You know, and I mean they're still in New Zealand, so they're doing amazing stuff, but a lot of the time they are in studio. Whereas back then, you would have these incredible sets. And yeah, they looked kind of like Disneyland now, right? Where it's like the foamy concrete and stuff like that. But God, it still must have been so incredible to walk into some of those.
In the trailer, I don't see any little sister.
Really?
I didn't see her.
No.
I love that little girl. She's so weird.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't really know. Okay, so we've covered what... Is there any other thing that you think should get made? Please make it, Hollywood. Please make Idris, Stone, Fassbender, Davis.
That's it. That's all I want right now.
Now you want that? Yeah, I get it.
A big
I
old
feel
swashbuckler.
you. I feel you. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's kind of like our wish for the week.
Yearning for adventure. That's. And I think swashbuckling...
Escapism, big theme now in content development. We see it all the time going into meetings and stuff. For sure. Yeah. No one wants to make movies about pandemics. They want to make movies...
I want a hard dose of reality. I don't know about you. I haven't gotten enough. Let's check everyone's hopes and dreams, shall we? For a minute.
Yeah, I wonder how, we're also not necessarily... seeing a lot of the productions, but elsewhere internationally they are still shooting a lot, and they are shooting kind of naturally, and they're doing things the same as they always have. So it's really, we are kind of in a bubble here in Hollywood as far as like the shooting mechanisms and all these measures for COVID, because I have friends shooting in sets in Spain or Croatia or whatever, and every country has their own mandates. Everyone just kind of does their own their own kind of thing, and they're not really factoring in COVID the way we are here, because it's a different kind of, I guess, protocols into play and financial burden. Well, we'll see. But yeah.
See if we get any overseas news about entire crews getting sick or something like that. Who knows? Yeah. Let's make a company, let's call it Bucket of Cold Water Films.
Oh no. It's just
where
depressing.
Everyone's dreams
Everything is like Mice of Men and like Schindler's List. Just
guess what? You're not going to make it. That's it, or whatever it is.
Oh man. Very French of us. Very French endings.
Yeah, right. And at the end, he died. And at the end, he lost his job. And at the end, he was on the street. Unhappy. And she doesn't love you. And what else? It wasn't meant to be, by the way.
Here's one more thing that I want to say is we had this this intention. Maybe we missed our chance at the beginning to do this, but we're going to put it at the tail end. Okay. It's going to work.
What are we doing?
Subtext.
Oh, right. So
for Seduced and Abandoned.
Right. It's kind of like what's the big takeaway from the movie, or what are they trying to communicate, really?
Yeah. So in Seduced and Abandoned, I think the motto is, if you want to do anything other than a documentary, become an influencer.
Right. Or
stay relevant.
It doesn't matter where you are. Begging is never sexy. That's kind of hard.
Or if you have to beg,
do it
again on a yacht.
That's true. I like that.
At a party, because at least you'll get swag.
hey,
you get like a consolation prize at the end of it. At least
that's true. Like if I'm
like a nice cologne.
If
or
I
something.
have to beg and I'm also getting like great hors d'oeuvres and champagne, I'll be like, okay, well this takes the edge off.
Yeah.
So that's true.
Yeah, and at the end of it, you get a gown. Or
Better
something.
attitude. Sure.
Yeah.
You're like, ugh, I have to fly to a fabulous location and get. Yeah. So that's it. I think if you go into the begging process, assuming rejection, so that when it happens, you're like, okay, great, one down, right? Yeah. Actually, there was a guy who changed his life by telling himself, he was generally, I think, quite afraid and very reluctant to meet new people, was very, very afraid of rejection, and instead flipped it and said, my goal is to get 20 people to say no to me today.
Yeah.
And so...
Wait, yeah, where was that? That was in a book or something that we were talking about at one point.
I must have heard it, on our radio or
where
podcast
he
or something.
He actively sought
the rejection.
Yeah, because that was what he was afraid of.
Hey, would you buy me a candy bar? Something as small as that. What? No.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And thinking about becoming immune somehow to it.
Yes.
But inevitably what it actually did was gave him more acceptances, more than rejections, right? Like, wasn't it?
I don't know if he necessarily got more yeses than nos.
More than he got before ever even asking.
Well, right. Ven por el sí que no, ya lo tienes.
Exacto. Sí.
That's a Spanish thing. That's why I said yo and not yo, as I would with my normal accent. I think, I just think suddenly I kind of lost his fear of asking and interacting and so on. And it's supposed to, like, at first his goal was to be rejected, so he's like, I'm going to do something that's going to be easily rejected. And then after that you start saying, okay, let's try and get the yes, but the no won't hurt much anymore. It's like the Wim Hof method, like cold exposure, so you get no exposure, or, in quotation marks. Negative.
Yeah, no.
The no treatment.
We got this. Ice bath. What is the last thing you asked for, or what kind of a petition or a request do you fear rejection of?
Oh, wow.
Especially with work.
This is a hard one. I don't know.
Yeah.
First off, too, I haven't been around many people for so long that I haven't requested anything specifically. I mean, I guess help in a lot of ways is difficult to ask because you don't want to burden people. So that's sort of request. But I can't think of anything. I haven't asked anybody for a candy bar.
Right.
A stranger for anything. So, no. Perhaps I just avoid it as much as possible. Or I do my best to make a case for myself so that the request, even if rejected, I'm still perfectly fine with the request. Right? So, hey, I'm not sure if you guys give out this sort of information, but if you do, could you tell me what the budget was on XYZ?
Yeah.
And so in that case, I just think to myself, like, okay, if I couch it in I know you guys probably don't give out this information. Now you know that I know. You want to do it anyway? Then that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do it that way.
Yeah.
That's from practice, I guess. From being a grown-up. You give people an out.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. That is
How long has that been?
It's an hour.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I apologize.
It's our new... Why?
Just kidding. I'm joking. It's a
you're
joke.
welcome. We hope you enjoyed it. We are getting a kick out of having these conversations.
Yeah.
So thank you for tuning in to another week of Subtitles
in Spanglish. Watch Seduced and Abandoned.
Yes. And remember, mucha mierda as well.
Muchísima mierda,
Muchísima
everyone.
mierda.
Not just mierda.
Yes. And thank you so much, you guys. We will see you next week. Oh, we have a movie for next week.
Oh, we do. The very highly controversial Cuties.
Cuties. We're going to watch it. French film right now. Very controversial. Very much in, the social movements and tackling a lot of those issues. The director, I have it here, Maimouna Doucouré.
Yeah. Maimouna.
We hope we said it right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let us know what you think. Send us your questions. And
much like Les Miserables, also children getting into trouble.
Ooh, yeah. Well,
so we reviewed that one, and this one's a different kind. But
we'll see.
What's all the controversy about?
I know. My prediction is I'm going to enjoy it and probably defend it. Just I have no context other than the brief information that I've had.
Yeah.
But I love, in general, French films. I love the fact that they tackle these complicated issues, and they make me think. Even if I hate the actual thematic, I tend to appreciate it as a point of conversation.
I like to make fun of the French and say, they will never shy away from putting young women in compromising situations.
That's
France.
that's
and I love France, by the way.
Yeah. And also, it'll be a nice departure from really the conversations leading up to then. So, because we are very close to this election, and we don't necessarily...
A lot of people are already talking about it, so I figured that's covered.
Yes. Just go vote if you haven't yet. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Yes.
And we will see you guys next week. So, that's
Hasta la
another
próxima.
episode of Subtitles.
That means
Hasta
until
luego.
the next one.
Yes. Ciao.
Bye.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Remember to vote. It was a nice reminder to give to them. I really appreciate it. You guys, thank you for tuning in. Have an amazing
Great job.
week. Yes, you too.